Okay. Um, I did I did want to like tie this though to this increasingly popular view that um, there's no genocide because of the only reasonable inference test, and like, oh, it can only be genocide when um, um, when there is no other possible explanation that it can be genocide. This is something that was present in the anti-IAGS statement that we analyzed last week. So I just want to hammer down the point with an example, right? Two things have happened recently in Israel, well, in Gaza, that have been revealed. Number one is Israel's decision to destroy every single high-rise building in Gaza City under the argument that they are observation towers, and therefore military targets. And then the other one is this revelation by this Dutch newspaper of kids being sniped in the head. Well, not really a revelation because we already knew that, but like increased evidence that children are being sniped. So the way that the only reasonable inference test works at the ICJ level is not by looking at the entire conflict and saying, okay, Israel is attacking Gaza. Why is Israel attacking Gaza? Can I say that the only reason, the only explanation why Israel is attacking Gaza is so that it can destroy the Palestinian population? Yes or no? That is how most people are implementing um, this test, and it feels like this is what the UK is doing as well here, but that is just not how it works, right? The only reasonable inference test, first of all, is only one of the possible methods to determine that a specific state has intent to destroy without actually having recourse to express statements of intent, which we do in the case of Israel. We have statements by Israeli leaders saying what we want is to, declare that there are no innocents in Gaza, and meaning that everyone is a military target. We have that, or that they want to like avenge October 7th by destroying the seat of Amalek. You know, um, we have that, so we don't really need to infer from conduct. If you're going to infer that genocidal intent from conduct, then you need to go you need to choose a method. One of the methods at your disposal is the only reasonable inference test. Not the only one. It is just one of the several methods that you can choose. For example, you can also look at the scope or the scale of the conflict to try and, like, for example, if you see a party, a state, going to every town um, and killing children, you don't really need to use the only reasonable inference test. You can look at this from the scale of the and the scope of the situation and say you are only killing children. Like, yeah, that's genocide. Um, so Lidibra says, why did they only cite Bosnia v Serbia and not mention the ICTY case law? Since you're on the topic of the only reasonable inference test, well, mostly because the ICTY case law deals with individuals, and so they're trying to ascertain intent in a mind, not in a collectivity like a state. That's the main reason why people don't do that. But you're right. The ICTY has used circumstantial evidence to detect genocidal intent in individuals. Like I said, the only reasonable inference test is only one of all the possible methods that you can choose to find intent, right? So, but let's assume that we need to use the only reasonable inference test because we're at the ICJ. You do not need to look at the entire Gaza operation and say, okay, does Israel want to rescue the hostages and defeat Hamas, or do they want to genocide Palestinians? That is not how it works. That's not what you're supposed to do, because the only reasonable inference test applies to patterns of conduct. What Israel is doing in Gaza right now is a collection of patterns of conduct, several different ones. And you can grab several of those and grab them together and analyze them together, or you can grab individual patterns of conduct and analyze them individually. right? So I've been trying to give examples of this on social media with these two situations, the sniping and the high-rise towers, to try to get people to understand how this method is used. So let's assume that we're not bundling different patterns of conduct into one single analysis. Let's analyze just the one pattern of conduct of destroying every single high-rise building. The argument by Israel is that this pattern of conduct, destroying every high-rise building because it might be used as an observation tower, is that in the rooftops, there might be cameras, and those cameras might be operated by Hamas, or they might have lookouts there. And there might be, weapon stashes in the basements. And so because those buildings, quote unquote, they don't really say they might be used as observation towers, because they're not saying we are targeting every single high-rise building that we believe is being used by Hamas at that time. They are saying we are destroying every single high-rise building because they might be used as observation towers. They are essentially just saying we're going to blow up all of these buildings. They are grabbing the military target, the observation point, and then they are extending it to the entire high-rise building, under the argument of, well, I can't leave the entire building up, because if I leave the building up, then it might be used by a sniper or by a observation team. And that's just not how it works, because it is a civilian object. This isn't chess. In chess, there's a rule: if you touch a piece, it's in play. It's not the same in war, and it's not the same in IHL. If Hamas touches a building, that doesn't mean that that building is forever tainted. If Hamas might touch a building, that doesn't mean that the building is a target. It means that the specific area of the building that is being used is a target for the time that it is being used, so long as it does not produce disproportionate civilian harm. Destroying an entire building full of homes because of an observation point that might be there and might not be there is disproportionate. Saying we will destroy every single high-rise building because it might be used violates distinction. You're not really attacking military objectives. You're attacking potential military objectives. And since you cannot certify that the object you're attacking is a military target, then it needs to be presumed as civilian. So this policy is not really about destroying military objects. On its face, the policy is not, if we see an observation nest, we will destroy it. No, the policy is we will destroy every single high-rise building in Gaza preventively. So that is unreasonable. No one in their right mind would say that in any other context. Like, that's not how it works. Like, the idea that you would destroy every single building because they might be used as observation towers doesn't really make much military sense. Even from the perspective of effective use of resources, like, why would you keep on using bombs on empty buildings and not say in your enemy, right? It is such an overwhelmingly evil thing to do, to destroy all the high-rise towers in Gaza. Not all the observation nests in all the high towers in Gaza that have observation nests at the time that they are being used. All the towers, that becomes unreasonable. It's not reasonable to do. That's not a reasonable thing to do. Okay, so what's reasonable? What reasonable inference do we have from destroying every single high-rise building in Gaza? Could, quote unquote, we want to make Gaza unlivable be one such reasonable inference? I think so. I think from the context of everything that's been going on in Gaza, it is reasonable to assume that what Israel is doing is it's trying to make Gaza unlivable, and destroying every single high-rise building in Gaza contributes to that goal. Is it the only reasonable inference from that pattern of conduct? I think so. I don't think it's reasonable to conclude that Israel is actually going after observation nests. And if it were, it would still be unreasonable. So we have concluded that we have a reasonable inference from this pattern of conduct that they want to make Gaza unlivable. That's it. That's how you infer intent. Same with the sniping of children. Why would Israel snipe children? The argument that the soldiers give, in fact, they interviewed a sniper, an American sniper, about why did he snipe an entire family of Palestinians in Gaza, a man, then his brother, and then their father, as they try to rescue the bodies of their fallen family member. And what he said was, "Oh, well, I mean, I did it because like they crossed an invisible line in the desert." That's unreasonable, right? It's not reasonable for you to say, "Oh, we just drew an invisible line in the desert, and whoever crossed it, we killed him because that was militarily necessary." That was militarily necessary. You did not check if they were Hamas or not. You did not check if they were combatants or not. You just shot them because they walked into that place that you decided was a death zone. That's not reasonable. There's no military point in doing that because you're killing civilians. There's no military like necessity of killing civilians. And if you're not checking, that's not reasonable, right? Oh, was it a German sniper? Sorry, I didn't know. Oh, at least one was from Chicago. Yeah, that's what I thought. It was from Chicago. And so, but if that is the argument, that is not reasonable. So what can we infer from the pattern of conduct of a bunch of kids showing up with bullets in their heads? That they walked into the forbidden zone and therefore this sniper had to shoot the 4-year-old in the head or the 10-year-old in the head or the 13-year-old in the head because they walked into the forbidden zone. So of course it's reasonable to shoot children. You see children and you think, oh, they shouldn't have crossed the forbidden zone, therefore I need to shoot them in the head. That's not reasonable. So what is the reasonable inference to make out of a sniper that snipes children in the head? Once, twice, thrice, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. What is the reasonable inference? Is it reasonable to infer from that conduct that that person is sniping children because he sees Palestinians as nothing, as barely human? And so he is in the context of a war that is seeking to expel Palestinians from Gaza, that is seeking to avenge October 7th. He just really hates Palestinians and wants to make sure that there are no that there are no Palestinians in that area. Or is it possible to infer that this person is killing children because that makes Palestinian life impossible if you kill the children? Or is it possible that he wants to like make sure that Palestinians leave because children are being shot, and so he wants to terrorize them into leaving? Is that reasonable within the context? Yes. Is it the only reasonable inference? Well, I mean, there is the other reasonable inference that he's a psychopath, but that becomes less reasonable when there's so many psychopaths, so many snipers. So at some point, yeah, the more reasonable one is this is a genocide. There's intent to destroy. That's how you use this test. Now combine all of them. Combine the high rises, combine the death zones, combine the sniping of children, combine the GHF, combine the starvation campaign, combine the deliberate destruction of homes, mosques, churches, and universities. Combine that with destroying the healthcare system. Combine that with taking away electricity and water. Combine that with the soldiers that are celebrating shooting at civilian targets. Combine all of those together and ask the same question. What's the reasonable inference from all of these patterns of conduct? Is that Israel wants to destroy Palestinians as a group the only reasonable one, yes or no? That's how you use it. And I don't think that that's how it's being presented in the media. And that is a true shame. Because it's just disinformative. It just doesn't, it's just wrong. Right? And when you look at it in that way, it becomes very obvious that this is a genocide. At least for me, right?